Cool. So we're going to spend a little bit of time thinking about, or having a chat about, the book of Mark. This is, they're on the table in front of you. As we have done previously, I want to encourage you to pick one up, take it home with you, have a read through it. If you want to write in it, write questions that you want to ask as we kind of go through this, then please feel totally free to do that. They are there for you to help yourselves to. So when we have done this recently, we've been looking at Mark, and we've been looking at stories about Jesus that tell us who Jesus is and what Jesus is like. A little intro. So obviously, hopefully you might have gathered by now that Mark is a book. And what should we do with a book? Read it. Yeah, thank you. It's a book about a person. So two important kind of questions that Mark covers in his book: who Jesus was and why Jesus was significant. And as we explore this, as we read about Jesus, some of the stuff that he says, it's important that we remember.
Yeah, hang on.
Thank you. No stupid questions, no stupid first impressions, no stupid feelings. Like, we want this to be a place where we can, really ask the stuff that is in our heads and discuss that, have a chat with each other. It's not about us giving each other answers, but let's really get stuck into Jesus. What's the next slide, Chris?
Video.
Okay, thank you. And as I have said, so we've been looking at stories within Mark. So we've kind of jumped a little bit all over the place. But Mark, it's a whole book. It's got a beginning, it's got a middle, and kind of an end, but we'll talk about that another time. And so over these next 6 gatherings, we're going to be concentrating a bit on how this Jesus story ends. So after this week, we'll be having a look at what happened in the week before Jesus died and look at some of those stories that Mark tells us. So that is where we're going to be going for the next few weeks. I've got a video that I want to show you, and it's a really, I think, helpful kind of overview of the whole of Mark in someone who says it a lot better with some nice drawings, better than what I could do. But yeah, this is, I guess, just to get into our heads, like, this is a book as a whole. Like, why is Mark writing this? What's it all about? So let's have a watch of the video. Thanks, Chris.
The Gospel of Mark is a book in the Bible about the life of Jesus. And the earliest reliable tradition tells us that it was written by a guy named John Mark.
Now, Mark didn't just grab a bunch of random stories about Jesus and throw them together. He's designed this book to address some really specific questions about whether or not Jesus was the Jewish Messiah.
So let's stop right there, because that's a term a lot of people like me aren't very familiar with.
Yeah, so the Messiah was a royal figure, sometimes called the Son of God, that Israel was expecting to come and set up a kingdom here on earth. And around the time of Jesus, Israel was occupied by Rome, and so many Jews were hoping that the Messiah would come and overthrow the Romans and rule as king.
But Jesus didn't overthrow the Romans. In fact, he was killed by them.
And that brings us to the very issues Mark is trying to get at in this book. So in the first half, he focuses on who Jesus is. Is he really the Messiah? And then in the second half, he's addressing how Jesus became the Messianic king. And then right here in the middle of the book is this pivotal story that brings the two halves together, and Jesus answers both of these questions.
Okay, so let's talk about the first half of the book, who Jesus is.
So Mark makes his beliefs about Jesus very clear from the first line of the book. The beginning of the good news about Jesus, the Messiah, the Son of God.
One of the next stories is Jesus getting baptized, and God's voice announces from heaven, "This is my son." So it couldn't be more clear. It's presenting Jesus as the Messiah.
Yes, but As you're reading through this first half of Mark, you'll notice something really interesting start to happen. Jesus is going about healing all these different people, and he's constantly telling them to keep quiet about who he is. This happens so many times in Mark's account, it's very strange.
Yeah, why keep it a secret?
So remember, lots of Jews had lots of different expectations about what the Messiah would be and do, and so Jesus doesn't want people to misunderstand what it means for him to be Israel's Messiah. And so with all that in mind, we come now to the pivotal story at the center of the book, where Jesus takes his disciples away and he asks them, "Who do you all say that I am?"
And Peter says what everyone's been saying, "You're the Messiah, the Son of God."
But then something new happens, because Jesus starts explaining to them how he's going to become the Messianic King, and it is not what they expected. He says he's going to suffer and die and rule by becoming a servant, or in his words, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to become a servant, and to give his life as a ransom for many.
Peter is startled by this and he rebukes Jesus because there's no way he's going to let Jesus die. And Jesus responds, "Get behind me, Satan," which is really intense.
It really is. But it highlights how important it is for Jesus that his disciples come to understand who he really is. And so here, now in this pivotal section, Jesus tries 3 different times to have this conversation with them, and every time they respond in confusion and even fear.
Okay, so this launches us into the second half of the book, where Mark addresses the question of how Jesus becomes the Messianic King. It's the last week of Jesus' life. He goes to Jerusalem, gets in conflict with the religious leaders, and gets arrested.
And he's put on trial as someone who's claiming to be the king of the Jews. He's even given a crown and a purple robe like a king would get, but it is all a cruel joke.
Then he's mocked and beaten and hung up on a cross where he dies.
And it's here in this crucial scene that we meet a new character,
A Roman soldier.
who suddenly gets everything that's going on.
He says, "Surely this is the Son of God."
Which is crazy. It's an enemy who's first putting it all together, that Israel's Messianic King is the crucified Jesus.
That's the structure of the book of Mark. But the book doesn't end with Jesus dead on the cross.
No. So on the 3rd day, some women go to visit Jesus' tomb, only to find that it's empty. And then there's this angel standing there, instructing them to go and tell this good news that Jesus is alive from the dead. But instead, they run away and they don't tell anyone because they're afraid, and that's how the book ends.
Which is a really abrupt ending.
Yeah, it's so abrupt that later scribes did add an ending that brings more closure to the story. And you'll find that story in your Bible with a little footnote that says it was added much later. But Mark's a brilliant storyteller, and he's intentionally ended this book abruptly. So all through the book, the disciples have been confused about Jesus' plan to give up his life, the story in the middle, and now right here at the end. It's like Mark is acknowledging just how startling this claim really is. And he wants you, the reader, to wrestle with it for yourself. Is this crucified Jesus really the Messiah that they've been waiting for?
Cool. A lot to take in there, and we will share this video on the Thursday Gathering page on our website. So if you want to go and have another watch of it, take home your book of Mark and have a read and watch at the same time, please do that. And as I said, over the next few times that we gather, we'll unpick a bit more of that last kind of part of Jesus' life. But one of the things that I love about this, like right at the end, I said that Mark's Gospel, so the book of Mark, it's an invitation to wrestle. Like we get to wrestle with these questions of who is Jesus? Why is he important? What does it mean for us and life? And we get that invitation to wrestle. So for the rest of the scene, what we're going to do, we are going to have a look at some verses in Mark. So it's Mark chapter 12, verses 28 to 34, and it's pages 32 to 33. And basically the theme is, or the question is, about the most important thing. So we're going to read that in a minute, but first of all, let's just have a little look at the situation around what we're going to read. So it's always good to have a read of what goes before and what comes after a bit in the Bible, and just encourage you to do that. But a few things to pick out. Jesus is very patient, which is one of the many things I really love about him. Because if you look at the few bits of stories before what we're about to read, Jesus is facing a load of questions from a load of different people who are basically trying to trip him up. Like these are religious leaders from different kind of parts of the Jewish faith, and they're coming to Jesus, and it says, like, they came to him and they're saying, "Why? How are you doing this? Why are you saying this? Who do you think you are?" Like verse 13 of chapter 12 says, "Later they sent some of the Pharisees and Herodians to Jesus to catch him in his words. And Jesus responds to them and says, 'Why are you trying to trap me?'" So, this is what's going on for Jesus. And I don't know about you, but what your response would be to that. Like, to keep facing this, yes, I know, I've got a really difficult question. I'm going to ask Jesus. I'm going to try and trick him. I'm going to try and catch him out. For me, my patience would wear quite thin quite quickly. But good news is, Jesus is very different to me. Anyway, we won't dig into that. That's something for me to think about. So that's what's going on around these verses. So let's have a read. So bottom of page 32. The title is The Greatest Commandment. So from verse 28. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked of him, "Of all the commandments, which is the most important?" "The most important one," answered Jesus, "is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. The second is this. Love your neighbour as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these." "Well said, teacher," the man replied. "You are right in saying that God is one and there is no other but him. To love him with all your heart, with all your understanding, and with all your strength, and to love your neighbour as yourself is more important than all burnt offerings and sacrifices." When Jesus saw that he had answered wisely, he said to him, "You are not far from the kingdom of God." And from then on, no one dared ask him any more questions. I feel like that's Jesus doing a bit of a mic drop there. So I'm going to pick out 3 different things from those verses, share a bit of stuff around it, and then there will be space for you to chat together around some different questions. So the first thing, of all the commandments, this is what this guy comes to Jesus with, of all the commandments. And I think this is really important because there are 613 commandments in the Jewish Torah, which is the first 5 books of our Bible. And I'm not going to read them all, but here's a selection. So the commandments are: remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. You shall not steal. Do not wear clothing woven of 2 kinds of material. We'd all struggle with that one, I think. Do not cut the hair at the sides of your head or clip off the edges of your beard. A few beards here. Do not follow other gods, the gods of the peoples around you. Right, so there's so many different commandments, and so this guy is coming to Jesus and this is what I've got, this is what I've been used to trying to follow. Out of all of these, which is the most important? I think that's a really, really great question, and I'm interested that Jesus' response isn't like, well, of course they're all important. You need to follow all 613 of these commandments every day of your life. If you don't, then you're in trouble. Jesus' answer is very different. So, as we read, it says, love the Lord your God with everything you've got and love your neighbour as yourself. Jesus says there is no commandment greater than these. So Jesus is saying, like, yes, out of 613, there is one. Well, two actually, but really it's one. Not two, because two parts are inseparable. So it's actually one. And these, what we read here, like if you have a look in your little book, you'll notice, like at the end of verse 30, there's a little F. And at the end of verse 31, there's a little G. And if you look right at the bottom, it points us back to two different parts of the Bible in the Old Testament. So when these laws were given by God to the Israelites, these are actually two of them. So Jesus is pointing people back to like something from the past. So you can have a look on your phone, or if you've got a whole Bible with you. So Deuteronomy 6:4-5 and Leviticus 19:18. Jesus is saying, like, this is it. These are the most important. And I love that Jesus is doing a bit of a pointing back to the old. Like, the old is important. Like, I'm not here to get rid of the old. But at the same time, there's something new that is going on. And so the third bit from here. This is the response of the guy asking the question to the greatest commandment. And that these things are more important than burnt offerings and sacrifices. And like, if you read some of those old bits of the Bible, the Israelites spend a lot of time burning things and sacrificing things. Like, there's a load of like rules of do this at this time, do this at another time, do this at something else, and whatever you do, don't do that. But this guy, he's heard Jesus say these are the most important things, and he's recognizing that this is something different. Like, Jesus' way is new, it's different, and it's unexpected, and you can't earn it by keeping 613 rules. You don't even need to. This way, it's all about love. So I've got a few questions if it's helpful for you. Just some general questions about these verses. Like, just want to encourage you as you talk about them to, like I said before, be honest. And what do you think this means? Why is that important? What on earth is Jesus going on about? I've got no idea. But like, have a chat with people around you. Use those questions if you want, but if there's stuff as you've read this and you've thought, I really want to talk about that, then please do that. We'll have a bit of time chatting amongst ourselves, and then I might ask you if you're brave enough to share some stuff, because I like to hear what people are talking about. So is that alright if you do that for a few minutes, and then we'll come back together.